Have you ever noticed that some everyday movements don't feel quite the same anymore? Maybe standing up from a chair takes a moment longer, climbing stairs feels a little heavier, or bending down isn't quite as effortless as it once was. For many people over 60, these small changes can feel confusing. It's easy to assume it's simply part of getting older. But what researchers are beginning to understand is that mobility doesn't just change because of age. It often changes because certain muscles slowly become less active over time. And sometimes, it's not because those muscles are weak. It's because daily habits like sitting longer, moving less, or subtle posture changes can quietly affect how the body works together. What's interesting is that health experts are now talking more about gentle, low-impact ways to help the body stay engaged, including a surprising type of exercise that barely involves movement at all. These simple holds are being discussed more and more in conversations about healthy aging, balance, and everyday mobility. Have you ever noticed that some everyday movements don't feel quite as effortless as they once did? Maybe standing up from a chair takes a little more effort, climbing a few stairs feels heavier, or bending down to pick something up requires a moment of pause. For many people, especially after the age of 60, these small changes can feel confusing. It's easy to assume that stiffness, slower movement, or reduced flexibility are simply part of getting older. That belief is very common, and in many ways, understandable. But what researchers and health experts have been discussing more in recent years is something slightly different. While aging certainly plays a role in how our bodies change over time, mobility challenges are not always caused by age alone. In many cases, everyday lifestyle patterns quietly influence how our muscles and joints behave. Long hours of sitting, less frequent movement, and gradual posture changes can slowly affect the way the body supports itself during daily activities. And the interesting part is that this often happens gradually, so slowly that many people don't even notice it at first. You might simply feel that walking feels a little slower than it used to, or that reaching overhead feels slightly uncomfortable, or that your body feels stiff when getting out of bed in the morning. These experiences are extremely common, and they're part of a broader conversation happening in the world of healthy aging. Researchers studying movement and longevity often point out that the body relies on regular engagement to maintain strength, coordination, and balance. When certain muscles are used less frequently, they may simply become less active over time, not gone, not permanently weakened, just less involved in everyday movement. That's why many health professionals today talk about something called muscle activation. It's the idea that keeping muscles engaged through gentle, consistent movement can help the body maintain stability and coordination as the years go by. And this is where a growing interest in low-impact strengthening exercises comes into the picture. In recent years, public health guidelines and wellness experts have increasingly emphasized that physical activity doesn't always need to be intense to be meaningful. In fact, for many adults, especially those focused on long-term joint comfort and mobility, gentler forms of exercise can sometimes be easier to maintain. One type of exercise that has been receiving more attention is something known as an isometric hold. Now, the name might sound technical, but the concept is actually quite simple. An isometric hold is a movement where the body maintains a position for a short period of time without actively moving the joint. Instead of lifting and lowering repeatedly, the muscles stay engaged while holding a steady posture. You may have seen versions of this before without even realizing it, such as holding a seated position against a wall, maintaining a gentle bridge position on the floor, or pausing in a squat for a moment before standing again. What makes these movements interesting to researchers is that they allow muscles to engage in a controlled way while placing relatively low strain on the joints. For many people who feel hesitant about high-impact workouts or intense gym routines, this type of movement can feel more approachable. And that's important because one of the biggest barriers to physical activity for older adults isn't a lack of interest. It's uncertainty. People often worry about doing something incorrectly, or pushing too hard, or making discomfort worse. But discussions about gentle strengthening methods are helping shift that perspective. The goal isn't perfection. It's simply maintaining a level of engagement with the body so that everyday movements continue to feel manageable. Another aspect that often surprises people when discussing mobility is the role of posture. When most people think about mobility, they usually think about their knees, hips, or legs. But posture, particularly in the upper body, plays a much bigger role than many realize. Over time, habits like leaning forward towards screens, spending long hours seated, or looking down at devices can gradually influence the way the shoulders, neck, and upper back align. These subtle changes may seem minor at first, but posture affects how the body distributes weight and how efficiently muscles work together. When the upper body rounds forward, it can shift the body's balance slightly. That shift may influence how the hips move, how the spine supports the torso, and even how the legs stabilize during walking. It's all part of what movement specialists sometimes call the body's movement chain, the idea that different muscle groups are connected through patterns of coordination. When one area becomes tight or less active, other areas may adapt to compensate. That's why conversations about healthy mobility today often include the entire body rather than focusing on a single joint. Another fascinating discovery in aging research involves muscles that people gradually stop using as often as they once did. This doesn't happen intentionally. It simply occurs as lifestyles evolve. For example, many people today sit far more than previous generations, whether it's during work, commuting, or leisure time. When that happens, certain muscle groups may receive less stimulation. The glute muscles, which support the hips and pelvis, are one example often mentioned in research discussions. These muscles play an important role in stability during walking and standing, yet they may become less active when long periods of sitting become routine. The deep core muscles that stabilize the spine can also become less engaged if posture habits change over time. And the muscles that help keep the shoulders aligned may gradually weaken when the upper body stays in a forward position for extended periods. Again, this doesn't mean the muscles disappear. It simply means they might need gentle reminders to stay involved. This is part of the reason why simple exercises that encourage activation across different parts of the body can be helpful from a general wellness perspective. Many mobility programs include a small set of movements designed to engage major muscle groups in a calm, controlled way. For example, holding a seated position against a wall for a brief period encourages the leg muscles to stay engaged while maintaining joint stability. A gentle bridge position can activate muscles around the hips and lower body. Pausing briefly in a supported squat can encourage coordination between the ankles, knees, and hips. Even standing positions that focus on posture, such as gently opening the chest and shoulders, may remind the upper body to maintain alignment. None of these movements need to be intense or complicated. In fact, their simplicity is often what makes them approachable. Many people find that a small routine lasting just a few minutes can fit naturally into their day. And that leads to another important point often emphasized in health discussions: consistency. In conversations about wellness, there's sometimes a tendency to focus on dramatic transformations or intense workout routines. But when researchers study long-term mobility and aging, a different theme often appears. Small habits practiced regularly tend to have a more lasting impact than occasional bursts of intense effort. That's because the body responds well to steady engagement over time. Gentle daily movement can help maintain circulation, flexibility, and muscle coordination. It also helps reinforce the connection between the nervous system and the muscles that support everyday activities. In other words, the goal isn't pushing the body to extremes, it's simply reminding it to stay involved. And that's encouraging news, especially for people who may feel overwhelmed by the idea of strenuous exercise. Maintaining mobility doesn't always require complicated routines or expensive equipment. Sometimes it simply means making space for small moments of movement throughout the day. Researchers studying aging populations often highlight several lifestyle patterns that appear repeatedly in communities where people remain active and independent later in life. Regular movement is one of them. So is maintaining balance and posture awareness. Strengthening muscles that support daily activities is another. And perhaps most importantly, maintaining a mindset that movement is still valuable at every stage of life. Our bodies are remarkably adaptable. Even small changes in daily habits can influence how we feel over time. That's why discussions about healthy aging increasingly focus on empowerment rather than limitation. Instead of viewing mobility challenges as something inevitable, many experts encourage people to see them as signals, reminders that the body still benefits from attention, care, and gentle engagement. If today's conversation sparked any thoughts for you, I'd love to hear about your experience. Have you noticed small changes in your flexibility or posture over the years? Or discovered simple habits that help you feel more comfortable during daily activities? Sharing your story in the comments can help others realize they're not alone in navigating these changes. And if you found this discussion helpful, consider liking the video and sharing it with someone who might also appreciate learning more about the small habits that support long-term mobility, because the conversation about healthy aging is still evolving. And what researchers continue discovering about movement, posture, and daily habits may surprise a lot of people in the years ahead. Before we dive in, I'd love to hear from you. Have you noticed any small changes in the way your body moves during daily activities? Maybe stiffness in the morning, or certain movements that feel a bit harder than they used to? If that sounds familiar, share your experience in the comments. Your story might help someone else realize they're not the only one. Because in a moment, we're going to explore something many people overlook when it comes to staying mobile as the years go by. And understanding this could completely change how you think about movement after 60.